The narrative of the tokenization of real-world assets is coming, and it is coming quickly. With the narrative now backed by one of the world's largest companies, BlackRock, a $1 trillion company, I don't feel like the real-world asset narrative is one that can be ignored, especially as we head into this next crypto bull run. But what's clear from my own research is that you need to be very, very careful which real-world asset narrative altcoin you chase after. There is a lot of bad, untrustworthy projects in this space. And as we're talking about the tokenization of real-world assets, these are projects that need to be compliant. They need to be using the regulations that we have today as the guidelines, the railroads on which to build their projects. Because if they don't use those railroads that exist today, the chances are those projects just aren't going to make it into the future. So this marriage between real-world assets and blockchain technology has fascinated me for a long time now. And as I said before, it is one that BlackRock has kind of informally endorsed. And because I find this narrative absolutely fascinating, it is one of the quickest growing trends in 2024 right now, I am diving into another real-world asset altcoin project today, and that is the Realio Network. Now, the Realio Network has drawn so much attention over socials, especially crypto Twitter, and with it being such a low market cap coin, if the narrative and if the adoption of the tokenization of real-world assets catches on, this could have a massive amount of upside potential behind it. Before diving into this Realio Network deep dive, all I want to say is that if you like the video, please hit the like button down below. And if you want to enjoy more content like this, subscribe and of course hit the bell notification to get notified when I upload more videos like this. And as I always say, you need to have an altcoin shortlist in mind. You need to have your top 3 or 4 favorite altcoins in your head or on a list on your phone or your computer, so that if we see favorable exchange rates in the future, and there will be pullbacks throughout this crypto bull run, that we can then enter instantly without even having to think about it. The research and the prep already needs to be completed so that you are ready to go. And if you have no idea where to start with any of that, that is why I put out my 80/20 crypto newsletter to help people build an altcoin shortlist. So if you're interested in that and you think it might help, the link to that newsletter will be down in the description down below. It's definitely time now for us to dive into the Realio Network. So as we can see on Realio Network's X page here, the idea behind this network is to eliminate the barriers to invest in, trade, and leverage digital real estate, private equity, and other real-world assets through DeFi. So the idea is to open up access to these global capital markets which contain trillions of dollars worth of value. And these types of assets, real estate, private equity, there are typically high barriers to entry. There is often no transparency, and there is a lot of intermediaries in between. So the likes of real estate agents, solicitors, and there is also very little liquidity. You can't sell a house instantly and receive that cash instantly. There is a massively long process involved in that. And that's the reason why the team behind Realio wanted to develop the Realio Network as a layer 1 multi-chain blockchain that is focused on the management and issuance of tokenized real-world assets. And as it says on its homepage here, Web3 ecosystem for digital and real-world assets. Now, what does the Realio Network actually do? What does that mean? Well, the Realio Network is composed of 2 layers. The first layer is the Realio blockchain, and this was developed using the Cosmos software development kit. So it's part of the Cosmos ecosystem. And then on top of that, the second layer is the Realio issuance network. And this is the layer where users can convert any real-world asset into a token. And that can then be traded through their platform. The really interesting thing about the Realio network is that this is a project that is fully SEC compliant. And we'll get onto this a little bit later. But because it is fully SEC compliant, everything that is completed through this network is performed to the highest regulatory requirements. Now, the Realio project was founded in 2018, and it's therefore not a young project. It's a project that's taken some time to get up and running. And although the beta testnet has been operational for several years, the final mainnet wasn't launched until 2023. So we have only had a mainnet in operation for 1 year now. In the middle of its development, it launched the RIO Token, and that was back in 2020. And we'll get onto what the RIO Token does and why it exists in just a moment. But before that, I want to say that the team is fully doxed. So this is a project with a fully doxed team. You can see all of the members. It's headed up by co-founder Eduardo Ramiro. Everyone is on there. They're on LinkedIn, which is great to see. A few are on Twitter as well. So there's no one hiding in the shadows for the Realio network, which is always a massive tick. Now, the native token, ticker RIO, is the Realio network's utility token and is designed for the payment of fees, and it's also designed for the security of Realio's proof-of-stake blockchain. And although not integrated yet, I believe that in the future, based on my research, that there is going to be the introduction of a burn mechanism for the RIO token. So when an investor or a user of the platform wants to come and tokenize a real world asset, when that occurs, a small percentage of RIO will be burned, which will add a potentially deflationary mechanic to the token. Another thing to note is that the token was launched completely fairly without an ICO or a founder pre-mine. We can see the roadmap for the RIO token here. We can see that in the future, it's got fee burning, super staking on the horizon, a part of revenue share, bridging, a few wallet integrations, and then we come to RIO's supply. And before I dive into this, we'll talk about the tokenomics over on CoinMarketCap. So at the time of shooting this video, the price of the RIO token is $1.81. The market cap for Realio stands at just under 12 million. So it is firmly in the micro cap niche. And of a maximum supply of 75 million RIO coins, only 6.5 million RIO are currently in circulation, which is approximately 8.7%. Now, after that brief run through of some of Realio Network's key fundamentals, I want to now take you through the upsides and the risks. Of course, we need to consider both of these in order to try and assess whether this is a token that should be placed on an altcoin shortlist. Now, one big upside for me, and I've already mentioned this, is that the Realio Network is fully SEC compliant. And to go along with that narrative and this point, the Realio Network is headquartered in New York City, which you don't see with many altcoin projects because of the regulatory compliance that you need to conform to be based there. So you don't get that with many projects, which instantly you would think protects it from any future SEC witch hunts that we might see occur. Another thing that I want to draw your attention to is RIO Token's price. Now, this is the all-time market price chart for the RIO token, and we can see that since October of 2023, so over the last 6 months, we have seen a massive spike in activity on the RIO token and an increase in price. We can see that it has been around since 2020. It had a lot of volatile price movements by the looks of things, spiked up to an all-time high of $3.81, and then it ranged between approximately 80 cents all the way up to $2.50 before then closing out for the bear market and bottoming out for a couple of cents. Now, a lot of projects, you see that and it bottoms out and it doesn't come back, but we've seen price activity return to RIO, which is a really good sign. Another promising point for the upside is this burn mechanism that they are trying to implement. So if this burn mechanism is implemented and there is this deflationary mechanic where RIO tokens are burned when a real-world asset is tokenized, that could be really, really good. And at the moment, that means nothing because there isn't enough activity on this Realio network. There's not enough real-world assets being tokenized. But in the future, if that happens, that will be a brilliant deflationary mechanic to help drive the price of RIO higher. Another thing I want to draw your attention to is that in March of 2024, so only a few weeks ago, crypto sleuths managed to track down some on-chain evidence that was released that highlighted that BlackRock's crypto wallet received some RIO tokens. In addition to that, it also received Realio Network's stablecoin, because there's a stablecoin in the network called RUSD, and also Realio's hybrid utility token, which is RST. Now, there's been no explanation as to what this is or why this happened, but This, as Dr. Evil of Crypto explains, so after doing a little digging, it seems like there has been one interaction that nobody's noticed yet, a transfer from the Realio Network's reserve wallet. So it's come from Realio Network's reserve wallet, sending BlackRock 10,000 RIO tokens. And this isn't just a random holder sending it, it's that actual Realio reserve, which holds approximately $48 million worth of Realio's security token, RST. We all know BlackRock is about to enter the RWA space in crypto. It now seems like RIO will be involved in some capacity. Who knows? That could be absolute nonsense. But if it is throwing fuel on the fire, if nothing else, as to propel RIO price higher. And then finally, the last point that I want to make to the upside is that the World Economic Forum believes that in the future, $10 trillion worth of assets will be stored in token form over the next 10 years. So $10 trillion over the next 10 years will be stored in token form. And if Realio Network only gets just a small slice of that pie, the value of the RIO token could very likely explode in the future. But now that all sounds rosy, but there are definitely some risks with this altcoin project, like there would be with any altcoin project. And it's not all about just throwing out the upsides here. We need to take account of the risks. And the first risk is that there is going to be difficult times ahead for real world asset altcoin projects. This is not going to be smooth sailing. There are, for the majority of real world assets, for every real world asset, whether it be shares, real estate, private equity, there are regulations and red tape, and they are there for a reason. So to become truly adopted, projects like Realio Network need to work with that red tape. Now, for the time being, that looks like it to be the case here with Realio Network. But in the future, they may come unstuck and they may hit a barrier which they just can't overcome. Which leads me to my next risk, which is what if adoption to this just doesn't come? Do you think all of the millionaires and the billionaires out there that have already made their money, they've got thousands of millions of dollars worth in real estate or securities, do you think they are going to want to trade tokens over the blockchain instead of how it has been done for years and years and years? I would doubt that personally. So it could mean that the adoption of real world assets and the tokenization of real world assets is just not as quick as what we think it might be. And then finally, I want to come back to the emission schedule for RIO. As I mentioned earlier, there's only approximately 8.7% of RIO tokens in circulation. So basically nothing. There's so much inflation left to come. And the inflation for the emission schedule for RIO is really, really strong over the first 8 years. So this is the 8th year here. We know that it was launched back in 2020. So we've had 3.5, 4 years so far. So we've got another 4 years of insane inflation emission schedule, an insane emission schedule, which then will peter off and start to plateau out. But after 4 years, the chances are we're going to see another bear market. This is not a token that you want to be holding into another crypto bear market. Fair enough, when we're in a bull market and everything is hyped up, it's okay, and it might be okay. There's no guarantees here. It might be okay. But this is definitely not one that you want to hold throughout a bear market. So as I mentioned at the start of this video, the tokenization of real world assets is a narrative that is coming. It is being informally, unofficially endorsed by some companies, including the likes of BlackRock. They believe that is the future. Blockchain technology does have a place in tokenizing real world assets and just making the whole process a lot easier. Yes, there is going to be a lot of regulation and red tape that projects like Realio Network are going to have to work towards, but so far so good. They are doing the right thing by trying to comply with what the SEC would want them to do, and I think that's the only way that they're going to survive. In terms of other projects that have been SEC compliant, the only one that I can think of off the top of my head right now is Stacks. And we have seen how well Stacks has done within Bitcoin's ecosystem. The price of the STX token has absolutely taken off. And part of that I believe, is the reason that there's less risk there. It can't be attacked by the SEC like a lot of other altcoins can for being a security, because it is compliant with the SEC. And this, the Realio Network and the RIO token, may have similar characteristics in the future when people realize that this is an SEC compliant project. And then finally, the crypto community have shown so much hype for this token. Now you can have all of the fundamentals that you want, but hype is something that truly drives crypto tokens meteoric. It shouldn't be the basis of an investment decision, but it does definitely help. I hope you found this Realio Network deep dive interesting, and if you want more detailed insights on a weekly basis, then get yourself on my mailing list for my 80/20 crypto newsletter. It's really important to always have an altcoin shortlist to hand, and that's what I am trying to help people build. If you have no idea where to start, there's over 20,000 different cryptocurrencies in this industry. It can be overwhelming. So just take it 1 week at a time, build up an altcoin shortlist. The crypto market moves really quickly, so it feels like you haven't got a lot of time, but you do have time. You have time to put the research in, and with for a helping hand with that is what the 80/20 crypto newsletter is there for. So go and check that out in the link down below. That's it from me. All that's left to say is thank you so much for watching this video, and I will hopefully see you in the next one.